Hey everybody, Zachary from Zachary Zoo Adventures. So we are at the end of another really fantastic year. So this is my year in review video of 2024. Over the year, I got to go to a lot of fantastic locations. This year, I believe I went to about, I think, 49 or 50 locations. I'm not exactly sure. This year, I believe I visited about, I think, 15 different states. I think either 5 or 6 new states this year. I usually try to visit a new state every year, and I also did a return visit to the Kansas City Zoo and Aquarium for their new aquarium that opened last year, and I also did a return visit to the Omaha Henry Doorly Zoo and Aquarium in Nebraska to see the areas that I missed last year in 2023. And I got to go to a lot more locations this year than I usually would. So this year was fantastic. I made lots of cool videos this year. I'm hoping to make it to new states in 2025. I also do have a few upcoming videos coming out throughout the month of January and February, as well as into early March. I do my best to make a year in review video about every year to let everybody know of all the different locations I go to. I always love traveling and seeing new states. I'm hoping to make it to a lot of new states in 2025, so I'm going to explain all the different locations I went to this year in 2024, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So let's get started. So the first location I went to this year was way back in the beginning of January. So the first location I went to this year was to the Sea Life Aquarium at San Antonio, Texas. That was a really wonderful sea life aquarium. I believe it is my first sea life aquarium I went to, but that was back in 2021 before I had my channel on YouTube. So it was really wonderful. They had a wonderful variety of sea creatures. I absolutely enjoyed every single minute of it. It was a wonderful aquarium. I enjoy going to all the different sea life aquariums. It is also one of the 2 sea life aquariums that I went to this year, and I will talk about the other one eventually. So it was a really wonderful sea life aquarium. I absolutely enjoyed every minute of it. The design of it is very beautiful. Usually all the sea life aquariums I go to are slightly different than the other, which is why I really like them. Because even though they are all slightly different from each other, what they do have in common is that they always do a fantastic job on their habitats. So right after that, a few weeks later after that, I actually got to go to another aquarium at the end of January. I actually got to go to a place called Sea Center, Texas. This is down in Lake Jackson, Texas. It is not a super huge facility, but it is still a really great location. I certainly enjoyed it. They had a wonderful variety of fish there and all kinds of stuff. There's also an outdoor area where you get to go on a boardwalk past a little wetlands area. In that area where I guess you usually get to see alligators, but I did not see any alligators. I did get to see a wild egret there, but I don't think there are any alligators in that area. Either there just weren't any because, like I said, this was during the end of January, so it was a little chilly when I was there. But if you are going there in the summertime, that's when you'll most likely get to see lots of animals. That's when it'll be warmer. And the other thing I like about this aquarium is that it has a little fish hatchery where you actually get to see, I believe, some type of fish there. It's actually sort of a very big lake. It's actually a man-made area, so where it has some fish there. I can't really remember what type of fish they were, but I do remember it had some type of fish in there, so that was a very wonderful experience. So right after that, after I was done with my attractions in January, my first mini road trip of 2024 was not until spring break. So right before then, around February, I actually got to go to San Antonio, Texas again. This time I was there for SeaWorld San Antonio. This was my first time at SeaWorld San Antonio. It's probably my first SeaWorld attraction I went to. I did film a full tour of it. The weather there was a little chilly. I believe it was somewhere like in the mid 50s, so it was still very, very wonderful. They had all the different roller coasters, and of course, I did not go on any of the roller coasters. As I was just there to film all the different sea creatures they have. They even had this really nice discovery area where they have their dolphins, and they even had some sharks there. I always enjoy seeing the different types of sharks, mainly the sand tiger shark, as that is my favorite type of shark to see at aquariums. If you are not familiar with my channel, I do love the sand tiger sharks because they're just really cool animals. So that was a very wonderful experience. The weather there, like I said, even though it was chilly, it was still very, very wonderful. They also do have a beluga whale show or a presentation or something like that. However, I was unable to stick around for it because, like I said, it was cold, and I don't think they were doing any of the shows there because it was a little too chilly. They even have an orca show there where they have their killer whales, but apparently I was unable to stick around that long because I wasn't going to have enough time to stick around because I had other things to do that day, I think. So it was a really, really nice attraction. I do recommend you check that area out if you are from the area of San Antonio or somewhere in that area, because it's really, really wonderful. So around spring break is when I went on my 5-day mini road trip. This was towards the state of Florida, and I heard there's a lot of good zoos and aquariums in Florida, so I decided to go to Florida for my spring break mini road trip. So my first stop was at St. Augustine, Florida, and I actually got to spend 2 days in St. Augustine, Florida. First day, I got to go to a place called Marineland in St. Augustine, Florida. It's a really, really nice aquarium. It is mainly a mostly outdoor aquarium, so I would not recommend doing it on a rainy day, and especially because I believe the paths at that aquarium are mostly gravel. So if you did go to that place on a rainy day, the paths would be a little muddy, and so I would not recommend doing it on a rainy day. Otherwise, your shoes might get dirty. And they do have dolphins there, and you actually get to swim with the dolphins. But I was not there to swim with the dolphins. I was mainly just there to show you all the different animals. And they even have a little private tour you can do with the workers, where they take you into a little indoor area where they have a few type of fish there. They also got some lobsters there. They even stuck around for their sand tiger shark presentation, where you get to see them feed the sharks. So that was a really, really wonderful experience. I enjoyed this place a lot, so I definitely would recommend it if you are from the area of St. Augustine. So right on the next day, my second day in St. Augustine, Florida, I actually got to go to 2 different locations that day. The second one was unscheduled, but the first one was in my plans. So the first attraction of the day was to St. Augustine Alligator Farm in Zoological Park. I really, really enjoyed that a lot. It was very, very enjoyable. They had a wonderful variety of different crocodilians there. And of course they had alligators, as it would not be called Alligator Farm Zoological Park without their alligators. They also did have a few type of snakes there. And my favorite part about this area is that they had this really huge saltwater crocodile. I believe his name is Maximo. He was a really, really huge crocodile. They actually had 2 saltwater crocodiles. They had the large one and a smaller one. Then this place does actually have every single species of crocodilian, so I definitely enjoyed this place a lot. They also had a couple of birds there. They even had, I believe, some lemurs there. They also got the sloth there. So they do have a wonderful variety of reptiles there, but like I said, they also do have a few smaller mammals. They got some lemurs there, as well as a few types of birds there. So it was a really, really wonderful experience. So right after I was done with the St. Augustine Alligator Farm Zoological Park, I also had time for another attraction to do that day, and that was the St. Augustine Aquarium. That was a really wonderful experience. This was sort of a bonus attraction because I didn't think I was going to have time to do it, but luckily I did because it was only about 20 minutes away from St. Augustine Alligator Farm Zoological Park. So it was a really wonderful attraction. It's kind of like the Marine Land where they also do a private tour where you get to see some of the animals there. It also shows you a little shark tank, I believe, where they have their sharks and rays there. So it was definitely a wonderful aquarium. It was very, very nice. The tanks and the habitats were really well done, and it was really, really impressive. So on the next day after that, as I was in Florida, I was in Orlando that day, and that day I actually got to go to Disney's Animal Kingdom at the Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando. That was really, really nice. I did enjoy going through Disney's Animal Kingdom. It was really, really nice. They had a wonderful variety of animals, and of course, I did not go on any of the rides there, but I did, however, go on the Kilimanjaro Safari that takes you on a tour of all the different animals from Africa. It was really, really wonderful. The weather that day was really, really nice. They even have a train ride called the Rafiki's Planet Watch. I believe it takes you to the second station where you get off and you get to see some animals there. I believe they also have a petting zoo there where you get to see their goats. It was really, really wonderful. I definitely enjoyed it. I especially like going through the Asian area that takes you through on a path that takes you past all the different animals. They got Komodo dragons, which apparently were not out because on the day I was there, it was actually somewhere in the low 50s and eventually went into the mid 60s, so that was too chilly for the Komodo dragon. They even had tigers there. It was really, really wonderful. I definitely enjoyed it. It was a very wonderful experience. So on the next day after that, I was in Miami, Florida, and this time I got to go to a really nice zoo called Zoo Miami. Now this zoo, it was absolutely a wonderful zoo. It was a pretty decent sized property, and since the zoo was very, very large, it was actually a two-part video release because I like to keep my videos under an hour and 20 minutes, that way people won't lose interest if they're watching a video that's that long, unless if it's a part 3 to a video I'm making to a two-part release I made the year before, then I would let that video be as long as it wants to be. It was a really, really fantastic zoo. They had this really nice area called I believe the Mission Everglades. I believe that's what it's called. I'm not exactly sure. That's where they have all the animals from Florida. They got black bears and of course the alligators, of course, guys. There are alligators all around the state of Florida. Even though I am not from the state of Florida, I have heard that there are alligators found everywhere in the United States. Florida. They are found everywhere in Florida, including like lakes, retention ponds, or rivers, things like that. Any body of fresh water in Florida is basically going to contain an alligator. There actually has been cases of alligators in people's swimming pools in Florida, which doesn't usually happen very often, but there have been cases of alligators in people's swimming pools, which gives you an example of that, how there are alligators everywhere in Florida. And if you do live in Florida and you live near a body of fresh water, then it's most likely going to contain alligators in it. Another really cool thing I like about this zoo is that I believe it has a little motor scooters there that you can ride on, because since it's a very large zoo, that means there's going to be lots of walking, and in case you don't want to walk the whole way, you can use one of those scooters or rent them. I'm not exactly sure that you can use them to get through the zoo in case you don't want to walk through the whole thing. But I chose to walk through the whole thing because it's really good exercise. So on the next day after that, I was on the west side of Florida, and on that day, I decided to go to a place called the Clearwater Marine Aquarium in Clearwater, Florida. This was a really beautiful aquarium. They had wonderful tanks there. It was so beautiful. I definitely enjoyed every minute of it. They had a wonderful variety of animals there. They had dolphins. They also are building a brand new manatee habitat that is coming up soon. I'm not exactly sure when it's going to be built, but it did say it was going to open in spring 2024, but it's already fall now, and I don't think it is now open, but hopefully it'll open up soon. Because if you are from the area of Florida, I recommend you do a Google search and you might know when they opened that new area, because I'm not exactly sure. Alright, so on the next day after that, which is also the last day of my spring break road trip, I decided to spend the last day at Zoo Tampa at Lowry Park in Tampa, Florida. That was a really fantastic zoo. I have been to that zoo before. I actually went there 3 years ago, and I did go back there, and they actually have a brand new Wild Florida section that opened in 2022, and they also just opened a new stingray touch pool habitat that actually just opened a few days before I got to that zoo. They even have this really nice little tram ride called Expedition Africa that takes you on a loop around the African area. It's basically the same animals you can see from the walking point. So I also went through the African area and I did the tram ride. And this was actually a 2-part video release because of its size, because it was a pretty decent sized property. There was lots of walking, and the habitats, they were absolutely gorgeous. I am very impressed with the design of this zoo. It is just very wonderful. So that was my spring break mini road trip I did, and my next major road trip was not until the end of May. So before then, around April, I actually went to an attraction up in New Braunfels, Texas called Animal World and Snake Farm Zoo. And it did have a few snakes there. Even though there are some of you out there that don't really enjoy snakes, still I filmed it anyway for education purposes. They also had a few type of mammals there. They had jaguars there, and they also had, I believe, hyenas and lions there as well. So it was a very wonderful experience. It's really nice. They had an awesome variety of animals there, and it was very wonderful. So my last single day attraction of the year, or not really the year, but from the spring, was on the first week of spring. I got to go to a third attraction in San Antonio. This time I went to the San Antonio Aquarium. Not to be confused with the Sea Life Aquarium I went to in January. This is a completely different aquarium in San Antonio. This is actually an interactive aquarium they have. They had a really nice variety of sea critters there. I believe they had some sharks there and a couple of mammals there. I have been to some interactive aquariums before, so this was definitely a very nice aquarium they had. So right after that, a couple weeks after I was done with the San Antonio Aquarium, I then went on my huge road trip up towards the northeast. So this was at the end of May on Memorial Day weekend. I was really looking forward to this road trip. I'm very glad I got to go through the northeast. Despite that it is really far away, I still really like it. So for my first attraction of the northeast trip was sort of unscheduled, but it was on the way towards New York. So that was the North Carolina Aquarium at Pine Knoll Shores. This is one of the 3 largest aquariums they have in North Carolina. The other 2 I did not get to this year, but perhaps in the future on a different road trip when I'm going through North Carolina, I'll try to get to those other two North Carolina aquariums. So the Pine Knoll Shores location, it was really, really nice. It had a wonderful variety of sea creatures there. And as you enter the aquarium, there's actually a really nice little waterfall area that falls towards the middle and between the path. It is definitely very, very beautiful. I certainly enjoyed it all. It is definitely a really, really nice aquarium. I'm super glad I got to check this place out. So right after that, on the next day, I finally got to my first stop in New York. And my first stop, that was the Staten Island Zoo in Staten Island, New York. This is sort of a smaller sized property, but still, it was absolutely wonderful. I have never been to this zoo before, even though I was born and raised in the state of New York. I have never been to the Staten Island Zoo before, but it was definitely a very, very wonderful zoo. They had wonderful habitats, a beautiful variety of animals there. There's actually this one area there that has a little aquarium and I believe a rainforest building there as well. So that was super, super fantastic. I enjoyed every minute of this zoo. So since the Staten Island Zoo was not so huge, I actually got to go to two different attractions that day. So after the Staten Island Zoo, I went towards the Central Park Zoo in New York City. This was another really small zoo because, like I said, it's sort of it's in Central Park. It's located in I believe the southeast or southwest corner of Central Park in New York City. That is a very, very fantastic zoo. It is actually one of 4 zoos and 1 aquarium that is operated by a system called the Wildlife Conservation Society. The Central Park Zoo is one of them. I also did get to go to the other 4 locations, the other being the Prospect Park Zoo, Queens Zoo, New York Aquarium, and the Bronx Zoo, which is the largest of the 5 facilities. I did get to go to the Bronx Zoo last year, and I really, really enjoyed it. So luckily I got to go to the other 4 facilities on this road trip. So Central Park Zoo was really, really nice. Even though it was not a big zoo, they had a really wonderful variety of animals. The habitats were really, really impressive. Because like I said, luckily I went here during May, so the weather was really, really beautiful. So on day 3 of my road trip in the Northeast, I actually was an aquarium day. There was some rain in the forecast that day, so luckily I got to go to the Long Island Aquarium in Riverhead, New York. That was a really, really nice aquarium. I actually did go there when I was really, really young, but I hardly don't remember anything about that aquarium. But luckily I went there this year, and it was really, really enjoyable. Even though I don't really think I've been there before, but my parents did tell me that I have been there before, but I just don't remember, because like I said, the first time I went there, I was really, really young. So this was a really fantastic aquarium. They had a little sea lion presentation that I did get to stick around for, because luckily it did not rain during the sea lion show. They even have a really wonderful shark tank there too. They had sand tiger sharks and a lot of other big fish. It was definitely a really enjoyable aquarium, so I do recommend, if you are in the area of Long Island, I do recommend you visit this aquarium because it is really, really wonderful. So on the next day after that, the weather in New York was very, very beautiful, and I also got to go to 2 small zoos on the same day, because luckily they weren't very big zoos. The first location was the Queens Zoo, and the Queens Zoo, I believe, is about an 18-acre zoo. So it is a really, really nice zoo. It mainly has animals from the Americas, like North America, Central, and South America. I really, really enjoyed that area a lot. There were some school groups when I was there, but luckily, despite the loud, noisy school groups, it was still really, really nice. They even have a children's zoo that's right outside the actual zoo, so I did the actual Queens Zoo first, and then I did the children's zoo afterwards. So despite its small size, it was still a beautiful zoo. So right after the Queen Zoo, my second attraction that day was the Prospect Park Zoo in Brooklyn, New York. That was a very nice zoo. Again, this was also a smaller footprint zoo, but still, it was absolutely enjoyable. They had a wonderful variety of animals there. The zoo was actually closed from, I believe, sometime in September towards May 26th. So apparently, because there was a really big flooding going on because of one of the hurricanes they had in late 2023, and because of that, it flooded the zoo and damaged some of the systems there or something like that, and because of that, the zoo had to be closed for a long time. I didn't think I was going to be able to make it to that zoo, but luckily it reopened right when I was about to go there, because luckily I was there on May 28th and the zoo reopened on May 26th, so I'm very glad I still got to check out that zoo. So the next day after that, I finally went to the fifth facility that's operated by the WCS, the Wildlife Conservation Society. And since I did all the zoos, I finally did the aquarium, and that was the New York Aquarium in Coney Island, New York. That was a really fantastic aquarium. I do remember going there all the time when I was younger, before I was a YouTuber, so I definitely enjoyed that. I also did go there 3 years ago in 2021, but I did go back, and it was really, really wonderful. They had a wonderful variety of fish there. They also do have a sea lion presentation show, but apparently it was under construction, so I did not get to check out that area because it was under construction. They also have a really nice shark building that has all the different types of sharks there. They also did have the sand tiger shark, which is my favorite type of shark to see at aquariums, so I definitely enjoyed that area a lot, so that was definitely my favorite part. So that was my time in New York, but my road trip was not over yet. I also went up towards Rhode Island, and the main attraction I got to go to there was the Roger Williams Park Zoo in Providence, Rhode Island. This is actually the only AZA accredited zoo they have in Rhode Island, so I'm glad I got to check this place out. It was sort of an overcast day. It did drizzle a little, so even though it did drizzle a little, it was still really, really wonderful. They had an awesome variety of animals there. They also have a few dragon displays there, but apparently that's on a trail that goes to the zoo, and apparently you have to pay a separate admission to the zoo and the dragon displays they have. I believe it's from May into the fall, but I did not stick around for that area. I was mostly there to film the zoo, so it was a pretty nice zoo. I'm very glad I got to check it out. So on the next day after I was done with the zoo in Rhode Island, I was in Connecticut that day, and on that day I got to go to Connecticut's Beardsley Zoo in Bridgeport, Connecticut. This is an AZA accredited facility. It is actually the only AZA accredited zoo in the state of Connecticut. It was a really nice zoo. It's not a super huge zoo, but still, it's really impressive. They also are doing some renovation work on their tiger habitat, so that's going to be really nice, as you can tell that the zoo is definitely supported by its community. It's really nice when a community cares about their local zoo, because luckily when people go and visit the zoo, they basically let their family and friends know, because that's how you support your local zoo, where you basically let your family and friends know, and that way they'll know to visit that zoo, and that gives the zoo more funding and more money to expand their area and add new animals and newer habitats to the property if you like seeing new animals and new habitats being built. So on the next day after that, I actually got to go to a bonus location, and I actually got to go to a place called the Buttonwood Park Zoo in New Bedford, Massachusetts. It was a sort of a smaller mid-sized zoo. It's somewhere in between those two. So that was a wonderful zoo. Even though it was not a big zoo, it was still really, really wonderful. They had an awesome variety of animals. There's this one building that has all the different animals from the rainforest, and also a little miniature aquarium there. That was a wonderful aquarium. I definitely enjoyed it a lot. So this was definitely a very, very fantastic zoo. This was sort of a bonus location because I did not include it into my plans because I didn't think I was going to have time to do it. So I really enjoyed this zoo a lot. So on the next day, I was in Boston, Massachusetts that day, and that day I really enjoyed that day, and during that time, I went to the New England Aquarium. The New England Aquarium is definitely a wonderful facility. They had multiple different levels at the aquarium. It was a pretty decent sized facility. This is actually one of my top 5 favorite aquariums in the US. One of them I have not been to yet, but I'm hoping to make it to very, very soon. And because of the size of this facility, this was a 2-part video release. It had multiple different levels, and it also has this really big tank that goes all the way from the top towards the bottom. So I mainly went through all the different levels and made my way up to the top, and I started from the top and went towards the bottom. I mainly started going from the bottom and up towards the top. And I started doing the really large tank from the top and made my way around it towards the bottom. And in that big tank has all different types of fish and a really huge loggerhead sea turtle. I definitely enjoyed that a lot. And I was really impressed with the design of this aquarium. It is absolutely beautiful. So the next day after that, I originally wanted to go to the Utica Zoo in Utica, New York, and I was hoping to get there. However, because of bad weather, I was unable to go to that zoo on this road trip, so apparently I could not get to that zoo, so I'm sorry I couldn't get there. So instead, I actually got to go to another bonus attraction. This time I got to go to the Southwick Zoo in Mendon, Massachusetts. And apparently, I was hoping it wasn't going to rain that day, but apparently it said it was going to be cloudy at the time it opened, but apparently when I was there, it was pouring rain, but apparently I still had to do it as I had no other choice that day. So it was a really, really nice zoo. It was a pretty large zoo. It is actually the largest zoo in New England, and this was a 2-part video release due to its size. They also do have a train ride there, and it's actually a trackless train ride that goes through the woods past their elk, and they even have a sky-fari. I do enjoy going on the sky-fari and train rides at zoos. It is very, very enjoyable. I always enjoy going on the sky-faris. So apparently it was a little rainy that day. I was hoping it was going to be sunny, but it wasn't, so perhaps it's possible I might try to get back to that zoo in the future, and hopefully it'll be sunny when I go back in the future, and I'm not sure if either I will film a full tour of it again to another 2-part release, or possibly treat it as a part 3. I don't really know exactly, so I'm just going to have to see what happens and how I feel. Alright, so on day 11, I was in the upper portion of New York. And during my time there, I went to the Rosamond Gifford Zoo in Syracuse, New York. This was sort of a medium-sized zoo, but it was really, really nice. It actually took me a lot longer than I thought going through there. Believe I was there for about 4 hours, so it is definitely a lot larger than I expected it to be. They had a lot of dragon displays there. I'm believing it's something they have at night. I'm guessing they have that throughout the summer or at the end of summer. I'm pretty sure it's from the beginning of summer and possibly into the fall. I don't really know exactly. They had a wonderful variety of animals there. And while I was there, they also had a really nice Asian elephant herd. And what's really cool about their elephants is that they have twin baby elephants, and I believe the Rosamond Gifford Zoo is the first zoo to have twin baby elephants, so that is actually pretty cool. So it was a really, really wonderful zoo. I absolutely enjoyed it. So on the next day after that, I was in Binghamton, New York, and I got to go to the Ross Park Zoo at Ross Park. Even though this zoo is not ACA accredited, it's really enjoyable, especially how it is out in the woods. I always like going to a zoo that's out in the woods because it's very natural looking, because I just really love nature, and I'm a nature kind of person, so I do love going to a very natural like zoo. The zoo opened in 1875, and this is actually the 5th oldest zoo in the United States, so it is really, really wonderful. My favorite part about the zoo is probably where they have this area called Wolf Woods, where they have this really wonderful habitat for their red wolves. I always enjoy seeing the red wolves. They are critically endangered out in the wild, and that's why I mainly get to see these animals in zoos. Because eventually, if these animals are hunted into extinction, then zoos are going to be the only safe places you'll be able to see these magnificent animals. So that was a really wonderful experience. So on the next day, on day 13, I was in Pennsylvania that day. I was at Pennsylvania last year, and this time I went back again. This time, on my first day in Pennsylvania, I checked out the Lehigh Valley Zoo in Schnecksville, Pennsylvania. And it was a really, really nice zoo. I loved it. Even though it was not a really big zoo, it is still a very, very wonderful zoo, especially how it's in a valley, because as you're driving through, you're going past all of these mountains, and the zoo is actually in a valley, like I said, so it is very, very wonderful. I especially did like when I was driving through the Northeast and seeing all the mountains and stuff like that. It was so beautiful. So the Lehigh Valley Zoo was really, really nice, and I really liked their red panda habitat that looked brand new. So the red panda habitat was actually brand new. So that, like I said, it's really amazing when a community cares about their local zoo, because luckily that gives them the funding to make new habitats and bring new animals or add new animals to the property. So that's really, really nice how the zoo cares about how the community cares about their local zoo. So on the next day after that, I was in Norristown, Pennsylvania. This is, I believe it is northwest of Philadelphia, and I got to go to a really nice zoo called the Elmwood Park Zoo. This was another smaller zoo, but still, like I said, even though it was small, it was really enjoyable. It was a very, very fantastic zoo. They had an awesome variety of animals. They are planning on adding new stuff to the property. I believe they're also going to add a train ride and expand their North America section. They also are adding a new Asian section of the zoo, and it also tells you what kind of animals they're going to have in their Asian area. So I'm definitely going to have to try and come back to that zoo in the future and to check out their new areas, and probably treat that as a part 2 or probably just another remake tour. So that was my road trip to the Northeast. So it was really, really nice. So a month later after that, at the end of July, was my second summer road trip, and this was up towards the Midwest. I absolutely love the Midwest. It is my favorite region of the United States because of all the environment and the way it looks, because it's so flat and there's so much green grass and all the greenery. It is absolutely my favorite area of the United States because it is the region that is closest to me, because I'm from Texas, and luckily, depending on where I'm going to, it's usually like either 10 or 13 hours, which is easy for me to drive to. So that's why I really love the Midwest so much. So this was definitely my favorite road trip I did during the summer. So as I started my road trip, I left Friday morning on July 19th. I had a full day of driving on the day before I got to my first location. So the first location I went to was actually to the Kansas City Zoo in Kansas City, Missouri. I was actually just at the zoo last year. I did film a full tour of it, and I have a 2-part release of it. They also were building a new aquarium there, and the new aquarium actually just opened last year on Labor Day weekend, so I decided to go back and treat this as a part 3. So I do recommend you watch parts 1 and part 2 first before you watch part 3, because part 1 and part 2 are going to include a majority of the zoo, because part 3 mainly has the aquarium and all the other areas of the zoo I couldn't get to, because I remember their sea lion habitat was under construction on my visit in 2023, and I also did miss a couple animals in the Africa area. Luckily, on my last visit, I got to go on the train ride and their safari. So luckily, I did not have to ride it during my visit in 2024, since I already did the rides last year. So the new aquarium is definitely very wonderful. It's a pretty good sized facility. I always love it when the zoo has an aquarium at it, 'cause it's basically like I'm going to 2 destinations in one day. So it is a very, very wonderful aquarium. I absolutely loved every minute of it. So on day 2 of my road trip, I actually got to go to a new state, which was Iowa. And my main reason for coming to Iowa was to the Blank Park Zoo in Des Moines, Iowa. This is actually the only zoo I went to in Iowa, as it is also the only AZA accredited zoo in the state of Iowa. So it was a nice zoo. I got to go on their train ride they have. The layout of the zoo is definitely very, very beautiful. I loved every minute of it. They also have a new area at their children's zoo where they have alpacas. I believe you get to feed and pet them, but usually when I go to a zoo, then there's an area where you can pet and feed the animals. I would not usually pet or feed them, because I would mostly just go there to film and show them to you, because that's usually the main reason why I go to zoo, because I like just showing people around and giving them a full tour of as much as I can at the zoos, but I don't usually stick around to feed any of the animals there, in case if there's an area where you get to feed them, because I mostly just show you all the animals that they have and as much information and everything. I basically just show you as much as I can. So on the next day after that, I was actually in Illinois. I was in Brookfield, Illinois, which is outside of Chicago. And during my time there, I went back to the Brookfield Zoo in Brookfield, Illinois. I believe I was there about 2 years ago in the summer of 2022, and apparently I missed a couple areas at that zoo on my last visit. And again, I also decided to make this video and treat it as a part 3 to my 2-part release from 2022. So I do recommend you watch part 1 and part 2 first, as they are going to include a majority of the zoo. I actually did miss their desert building that they have, and I believe I missed their children's zoo and another area I missed. So I actually did miss a couple areas. There's also this one area called the Tropic Zone or something like that, where it basically takes you and shows you all the animals of Africa that are from the rainforests of Africa, Asia, and South America. On my last visit, the South America section was not open. I was hoping it was going to be open, but apparently when I was there, it was under construction, so it's actually going to be they're building a brand new outdoor habitat for their gorillas. So that's really nice how this zoo is also supported by their community, so that's really, really wonderful. So on day 4 of my second summer road trip of 2024, I was going to be in Wisconsin for 3 days. So on the first day when I was in Wisconsin, I went to the Milwaukee County Zoo in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This zoo was also a very large zoo. I did look at the forecast, and it did rain a little when I was there, but luckily it only rained for about an hour, because it did start to drizzle a little around 9:30 when I got there, but luckily the rain stopped at around 10:30, so it was nice and sunny for the rest of the day. They also have a safari, but apparently because of the rain they had earlier that day, it was not running. So apparently I was unable to go on the safari. But they also had a train ride there, and luckily I did get to go on the train ride. What's really cool about the train that it actually has both a steam and diesel powered locomotive, which is really cool because most zoos I go to, they would have a locomotive that's either gas powered or powered by electric. So this zoo has both a steam and diesel locomotive. However, when I was there, they only had the diesel running. They actually have two different trains running, one pulled by the steam locomotive and the other one's pulled by a diesel engine. When I was there, they only had the diesel running. And I did look at their website. They actually were planning to get rid of the steam engine by October. I was there in late July, so they probably still had the steam engine by then. They just didn't have it running the day I was there. Now, because of the size of the zoo, this was a two-part release because it was a very massive zoo. I did spend a lot of time there. It was really wonderful. They had lots of walking. I was very impressed with the design of this place. It was really wonderful. So this zoo was definitely somewhere in probably my top 10 or maybe even my top 12 favorite zoos of the US. So the next day, as I was in Wisconsin, I got to go to two different attractions that day. The first one I did was the Henry Vilas Zoo in Madison, Wisconsin. This was a smaller footprint zoo, but still it was really wonderful. There's this one area, I believe, called the Arctic Passage, where they have their grizzly bears. They even had their polar bears. And I really enjoyed the polar bear because he was swimming in the water, going back and forth. I always love seeing the polar bear swim in the water. It was a really fun experience, and it was really nice. I did enjoy the layout of the zoo, and they even have this nice primate building at the front where you get to see all the different primates. So that zoo was really fantastic. I enjoyed every minute of it. So right after I was done with the Henry Vilas Zoo, the second attraction after that, I got to go to a place called Wisconsin Deer Park in Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin. That was a really wonderful area there. It was not a really big facility, but I still enjoyed it a lot. Even though it was a small area or small facility, it was still really nice to have different types of deer. They had fallow deer. The fallow deer is the deer you'll mostly see there, and it's also the deer that you can feed. You can feed the deer at this place. They also have white-tailed deer, but they're in a habitat, but you can still feed them. They also do have two bison there as well, and a elk there. They even have two horses there as well. And they also do have goats there, and you can feed the goats, but whenever you're feeding the goats, just try not to leave your food on the railing, because otherwise the goats will most likely steal the food before you can continue feeding them. And the only animal at this place that you cannot feed are the ring-tailed lemurs. That's the only animal there I don't think you are allowed to feed, so you are not allowed to feed the lemurs at this place. So it was a really enjoyable place. I did not include this into my plans because I didn't think I was going to have time, but luckily, since I was there during the summer, I believe during the summer they're open until 7 p.m. Since they were open till 7 p.m. and it was only like an hour away from Madison, I had time to check this place out. So it was a very wonderful experience. So the next day after that was also my last day in Wisconsin. This time I got to go to a wonderful place called the Northeastern Wisconsin Zoo in Green Bay, Wisconsin, or is also more commonly known as New Zoo and Adventure Park. Basically New, which I believe stands for Northeastern Wisconsin. This was a smaller footprint zoo, but still, it was really wonderful. They have a wonderful giraffe habitat, and they had bison there as well. It was super wonderful. They have this wonderful area, that a little loop that takes you past all the animals from North America. They got red wolves, and they even have moose and elk there. It was super wonderful. I would highly recommend this zoo. This is an AZA accredited facility, and it was super wonderful. Alright, so on the next day after that, I was in Minnesota for 2 days, and then my first day in Minnesota at my first attraction in Minnesota was probably my favorite, and that was the Minnesota Zoo in Apple Valley, Minnesota. This is outside of St. Paul and Minneapolis, so this zoo was absolutely amazing. They had a wonderful variety of animals there. As you enter the zoo, there's actually an area there called the Tropics Trail. That is definitely my favorite area of the zoo. That really does have a really wonderful design. It definitely does make you feel like you're in the rainforest as you go through that area. It basically takes you past all the different animals from Africa, Asia, South America, and Madagascar. They even have a little tank there that is really, really nice called the Living Reef. They even have this other really fantastic area called the Minnesota Trail, where you get to see all the animals of North America. Some of those animals, which I believe you can find in the state of Minnesota. But my favorite part of the zoo was, I believe, the Treetop Trail. I really, really love the Treetop Trail. It gives you an upper viewing of all the animals that you saw from earlier below on the Northern Trail. And what's really cool about the Treetop Trail is that that's where they used to have their monorail, because the Minnesota Zoo used to have a monorail that takes you around all the animals of the Northern Trail, but apparently they've had to shut down the monorail because it's been having a lot of problems, lots of breakdowns and stuff like that, and because of that they had to discontinue it. So luckily, instead of just tearing the whole thing down, they decided to make it more useful and just turn it into a treetop trail that you can walk on at your own pace. And this was a 2-part video release because this zoo was very, very large, lots of walking, and the Northern Trail there, which was probably one of my favorite parts, because like I said, my top favorite area at this zoo was the Treetop Trail. The Northern Trail actually has some very large, very widespread habitats, and I was just so impressed with them. They absolutely did an amazing job on their habitats. So I do recommend you wear comfortable walking shoes for when you go there, because like I said, with all the widespread habitats, that means there's going to be lots of walking. So it is a very, very large zoo, and I absolutely enjoyed it. This was definitely my favorite zoo I went to on this road trip to the Midwest. So on the next day, as I was in Minnesota on day 8, which when I was at the second week of my road trip, I actually got to go to a bonus location. First, I went to the Como Park Zoo and Conservatory in St. Paul, Minnesota. Luckily, this wasn't a very big zoo. I certainly enjoyed it. They had an amazing variety of animals there. They had this really nice big cat section where you get to see their tigers and lions and snow leopards and many other type of cats there. It was a very, very beautiful zoo. I did not include this into my plan, so this was a bonus attraction because I didn't think I was going to have time to do it, but luckily I had time to do it because it was not a big zoo. So right after I was done with the Como Park Zoo, I actually went towards the Mall of America. That was a really, really nice mall, and during my time there, I went to another sea life aquarium called Sea Life at Mall of America. I really love this sea life aquarium. This was my 7th sea life aquarium I've been to, I believe. I'm pretty sure it's my 7th. So it was a really, really nice, fantastic aquarium. Because like I said, all the sea life aquariums are slightly different from each other, but still they are really, really beautifully designed. So this sea life aquarium was definitely wonderful. I believe it has this other this really nice area called we basically go through a tunnel past their shark tank, and in that tank they have two sawfish. I believe their names are Duke and Duchess. I believe one's male and the other one is female, so it was really, really nice. I do love the sawfish where they basically had that long tooth that they use to stab their prey. And they, of course, also had the sand tiger sharks, which is my favorite type of shark to see at aquariums because they're just really cool looking animals. And while I was there, I actually purchased something from their gift shop that had my name on it. It was actually a little tag that had my name on it. I didn't think they would have my name on it, but luckily they did have my name on it, and I decided to purchase it and take it home. So it was a really, really fun experience. It was a little crowded, but luckily I still managed to get through the aquarium. It was very, very fantastic. So on day 9 of my road trip, I was in North Dakota that day. I have never been to North Dakota before, so this was my first time in the state of North Dakota. I really, really enjoyed North Dakota. It was very, very flat. They had a lot of very flat areas there, but lots of beautiful green grass. So it was definitely very, very flat, but still very, very beautiful. So my first day in North Dakota, I got to go to 2 different locations that day. First one being the Red River Zoo. This was a really, really wonderful zoo. Not a super big facility, but still it was really, really beautifully designed. They had a wonderful variety of animals, and they also have this one area where you get to see their bison and their prairie dogs. That area I can tell looks very brand new because they had new pavement and the area looks very brand new. Don't know if the habitats are brand new, but the building where you get to see the bison definitely looks brand new. So I really, really enjoyed this zoo a lot. They had an incredible variety of animals there. I definitely enjoyed this zoo a lot. So after I was done with the Red River Zoo, since it was not a very, very big zoo, I got to go to another bonus attraction. After Red River Zoo, I went to the Chahankapa Zoo in Wahpeton, North Dakota. Hopefully I'm saying the name of the zoo correctly. This zoo is not AZA accredited, but it's still really, really wonderful. I definitely like the design of it, even though the habitats did not really look, it's still a really, really nice zoo. They had a nice variety of animals there. It's still a really, really nice zoo, so I'm very glad I got to go to this zoo. And luckily, the weather that day at both these zoos were fantastic, and it did say it was going to rain, but luckily it did not rain at any of the zoos. But it did rain at Chahankapa, but luckily I got done with the zoo in time before it rained, because right as I got back into my car after I was done with the Chahankapa Zoo, it began to drizzle a little. So I'm glad I got to do these zoos in time before the rain came in. So on my second day in North Dakota, I got to go to a third zoo. This was probably my favorite zoo I went to in the state of North Dakota. That was the Dakota Zoo in Bismarck, North Dakota. That was a really, really fantastic zoo. This was more of a mid-sized zoo, but even though it was not a big zoo, they had lots of cool habitats. My favorite area of the zoo is the Wilderness Trail, and that area is where you get to see all their different hoofstock animals there. I definitely like seeing that area of the zoo. I really love that area a lot. They even have a trackless train ride there. I did get to ride their train ride. Train ride is about 20 minutes, and since the train ride was really long, and because of the size of this video and the length it would have been, this was a 2-part video release because it was even though it was not a big zoo, I did spend a lot of time at that zoo, so this zoo is a 2-part release. So it was a really wonderful zoo. The weather was absolutely beautiful, and I was really impressed with the habitats of this zoo. It was super impressive. So on the next day after that, I was in South Dakota that day. I spent 2 days in South Dakota. My first day, I got to go to 2 locations again. My first location that day was Reptile Gardens. This was sort of a reptile zoo. It has all different kinds of snakes, a lot of venomous snakes and non-venomous snakes. I understand, like I said, I understand there are some of you out there that don't really enjoy snakes, but still, I filmed it anyway for education purposes. They also do have a snake show where they basically talk about all the different different type of snakes they show, and they even have an alligator show where they have all the different types of alligators and they talk about the information about them. And I believe according to the website, that Reptile Gardens, I believe it said it is the largest reptile zoo in the United States. So this was a 2-part video release because, like I said, it was a pretty decent sized facility. And just like with St. Augustine Alligator Farm Zoological Park, they also had a really large saltwater crocodile named, I believe his name is Maniac. That's actually what his name is. So he was a really massive crocodile. He's definitely the biggest saltwater crocodile I've ever seen, and he's actually the largest saltwater crocodile they have at any zoo in the United States, so that's really, really cool. So he was definitely a very massive croc. They also did have some birds there. They also have a bald eagle there who was injured because apparently usually bald eagles, whenever I see them, or anytime you see a bald eagle at a zoo, it's usually because they are injured, and that means they suffered a broken wing, and with a broken wing, they cannot survive out in the wild, and they're also the symbol of the United States, so I really enjoyed this facility a lot. So for my second attraction of the day after Reptile Gardens, I got to go to a drive-through safari. Luckily, this drive-through safari was only about 3 minutes away from Reptile Gardens, so I am glad I got to check it out, and that was Bear Country, USA. This is also in the Black Hills, because like I said, it is not very far from Reptile Gardens, so I'm glad I got to check out this drive-through safari, and it was really, really nice. It mainly had animals from around North America. And then most drive-through safaris I go to, usually they have the multiple different animals all in one pasture. But at this safari, it actually has the animals are actually separated in their own areas. The first area you come to, I believe you go drive through the area where they have their elk. They also had wolves there. They had Arctic wolves on the driving part. And they also have this other area of the safari called Babyland, where you basically get to see all the different smaller animals they have. They got river otters there. They also had timber wolves there as well. And my favorite part about Babyland is that they also had this habitat that has all of their black bear cubs, and they were just so cute, and I did enjoy seeing the cubs. They were absolutely adorable. And on the driving part of the safari, they also had a really huge group of adult black bears, and the black bears are in their own separate area, but they actually are free roaming on the driving area. But luckily, they know that they're supposed to stay away from cars, and because usually at most drive-through safaris, you usually go over a cattle guard that keeps the animals going into the other area. So luckily, the predators at the safari can't go over the cattle guard to get to the other sections of the safari. So this was a really wonderful safari I got to check out. So on day 12 of my second summer road trip 2024, it was also my second day in South Dakota, and on that day I got to go to the Great Plains Zoo in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. This was a wonderful zoo. It was sort of a mid-sized zoo, but even though it was a mid-sized zoo, this was a two-part release because I did spend a lot of time at that zoo because they had a train ride there that was about 16 minutes. They had a really wonderful variety of animals there. And they also have a brand new lion habitat that I believe just opened. I don't know when it opened, but I can tell it was definitely a brand new area. They also have a little museum there, but apparently it was closed off for some reason. But that's okay because the museum actually has some taxidermied animals, and I'm not really a fan of seeing taxidermied animals. That's why I mostly prefer to see live animals. But yeah, it was really nice too. They had a amazing variety of animals there. The weather was really nice. It was going to rain that day, but luckily it rained right when I was done with the zoo. So luckily I got done with the zoo in time before the rain came in. So luckily I finished with the zoo just in time before it started to rain. I actually did miss a lot of animals at the zoo, because usually when there's an animal I don't see the first time, I go back to it on my rewalk, hoping it'll be out the second time. But a lot of animals were not out. I believe I did not see any of the marsupials. I also missed a couple birds. I don't think I saw their snow leopard. But even though I did not get to see every single animal, I still enjoyed it a lot. They had an amazing variety of animals there. It was definitely a wonderful zoo. So the next day after that, I went to two different locations that day, and this time I was in Nebraska, which was the last state on this road trip. So my first attraction of the day, I got to go to another drive-through safari. This one I went to is called Lee G. Simmons Conservation Park and Wildlife Safari. This is not very far from Omaha, Nebraska. And another really cool thing I like about the safari is that this safari is actually affiliated with the Henry Doorly Zoo and Aquarium in Omaha, Nebraska, which is really cool how this safari is affiliated with such a fantastic zoo. The safari is kind of like Bear Country, where it also has animals from North America, some which you can actually find in the state of Nebraska. And another really interesting thing is that just like with the Bear Country, I forgot to mention about Bear Country is that they do not have any animal feeding. You cannot feed the animals, but at the Lee G. Simmons, you can have your windows down, but you are not allowed to feed any of the animals, and you also cannot feed any of the animals at Bear Country, and you actually have to have your windows up at Bear Country. But at Lee G. Simmons, you can have your windows down, but you cannot feed or touch any of the animals there. And during the safari, there actually is a rest stop in the middle of the safari where you can get out of your car and stretch your legs, and they also have a bald eagle habitat in that area, and you also get to see their black bears. They also have gray wolves there as well. I always enjoy the wolves, and they're usually the animal I usually have to come back to, but luckily I did see the wolves when I was there, and it was really enjoyable. I loved the safari a lot. And what's really nice about the safari, they had all these different animatronics of all the Ice Age animals, or all the animals from the Ice Age. Even though they were not real and they were just animatronic, it was still really wonderful because I absolutely enjoyed every minute of it. So after I was done with the safari park, I had time to go to another bonus attraction, and that was the Lincoln Children's Zoo in Lincoln, Nebraska. Luckily, it was only about 30 minutes away from Lee G. Simmons, and thankfully it was not a big zoo, so luckily I had time to check out that zoo. And with the name Children's in its name, don't let that name fool you. This zoo is not just for children. The adults can come here, even the pre-teenagers and the teenagers can come to the zoo as well. So they actually have a wonderful variety of animals there. So this zoo is not just for children, but they do have a petting zoo area where they have their goats and stuff. They even have a train ride that goes around the zoo, and the train ride actually goes around the zoo twice, so that's really, really cool. They also do have giraffes there, and they do have giraffe feeding there as well. I definitely enjoyed this zoo a lot. It was really, really fun. I'm glad I got to check out this zoo. Alright, so on day 14 of my second summer road trip 2024, which was the last day of my second summer road trip in the Midwest, and this was probably my favorite day of this road trip. And on that day, I went back to Omaha's Henry Doorly Zoo and Aquarium. Now, I was actually just at the zoo last year in 2023, and this was the zoo I mainly wanted to go back to the most because I also missed a few areas last year. And if you do remember, I did film it, and it was actually a two-part release last year, and I did go back and decided to treat this one as a part 3, so I do recommend you watch part 1 and part 2 first because they are going to include a majority of the zoo. My last visit, the biggest area of the zoo I missed was the Lie Jungle building. That was the main area of the zoo that I missed, where they have all the different animals from the rainforests of Africa, Asia, and South America. I also did not go on their Skyfari because it was not open on my last visit because of high winds, but luckily I did get to ride it on my visit in 2024. They also have a brand new Hubbard orangutan forest that opened in the summer. It actually just opened, I believe, somewhere around June, and I was at the zoo in early August, so that's actually their newest area of the zoo. I mostly focused on the stuff that I missed last year, so I did not go on the train ride during my visit in 2024 because I already went on the train on my last visit in 2023. I also did not go through their children's zoo last year, so luckily I got to go through the children's zoo this time, and their Simmons Aviary, which was not opened last year, but luckily it was open this time. And even though I did say I was mostly going to check out the areas of the zoo that I didn't get to last year, I did go through some of the animal habitats in the African savanna area. So that was a very, very fun experience. I really loved the Henry Doorly Zoo because that is why I really, really love the Midwest, because luckily Omaha is only about 13 hours away from where I live, and since it's only 13 hours from where I live, that means it's close enough for me to drive to, because that's why I really, really love the Midwest. So the Henry Doorly Zoo is definitely in my top 12 favorite zoos around the US. It is absolutely world class, and this zoo was also the final zoo I went to on this road trip, and I believe also the final zoo I went to of the summer and probably of the year. And that zoo video and all of my last other places that I just mentioned to you, with the Red River Zoo, the Chahinkapa Zoo, all the zoos from the Red River Zoo to the Henry Doorly Zoo and Aquarium Part 3, all of those videos are going to be coming out next year in the following month of January, February, as well as into early March. And this is not the first time I've uploaded videos into the following year. I have done that before last year. So even though they're not out yet, that does not mean I forgot about them. Those videos will be coming out very, very soon, and they will be coming out throughout the month of January and February. So those videos will be out before you know it. So even though I did say the Henry Doorly Zoo was the last attraction I did of the year and of the summer, later on after that, after the summer was over, I actually decided to do a Halloween-themed video this year. This year was the first time doing a Halloween-themed video. I did do a Christmas video last year of the zoo lights at the Houston Zoo, and since I did their Christmas event, I also decided to do their Halloween event called Zoo Boo, This year it was from September 27th to October 31st. So luckily I went there at the end of September on the first night they were doing it. It was really, really nice. Luckily, they're open from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. So I actually went there. I entered the zoo at 6 p.m. when it was still light out. So I did film some of the animals there before it got dark. And as it got dark, that's when I then started filming all the lights and all the decorations. Luckily, it was not too creepy. It was a little spooky, but still, I was not scared. But usually, even though it was spooky, it was still spooky in a good way. So it was very, very enjoyable. I enjoyed it. All the lights are beautiful. So it is definitely a wonderful experience. And I also did do a second Halloween event. This time I went to Boo at the Zoo at the Austin Zoo. And the Austin Zoo's Halloween event was slightly a little creepier than, or spookier than the one they had at the Houston Zoo, but it was still really, really nice. They actually have a haunted train ride that takes you through the area where the train usually goes to. It has goes past a cemetery, and there are some people that you go past that might jump out and say boo to scare the people that were on it, but they don't do it just to scare people, but it's in a, a fun way. They have some creepy decorations as you go on the train, and they even have a haunted house, and I did do the haunted house. And what's really cool about the haunted house is that there's actually a person outside, and it asks you if you want scary or non-scary. I don't really know how the scary thing works, but they actually did say that the scary part is where people come out and scare the people as they are going through, but they also have not scary, where you basically just walk through the house and nobody comes out and scare you. But there are some creepy decorations, but they weren't too scary, so it was very, very fantastic. I also did film a couple of the animals before sunset, so it was still really, really nice. So that was the 2 Halloween events I went to. And since I already did a video of the zoo lights last year in 2023, I also decided to do the zoo lights at the San Antonio Zoo in San Antonio, Texas. So luckily, the lights were super, super beautiful. I do love the Christmas lights and all the beautiful lights they have. This was my first time at the zoo lights at San Antonio Zoo. I actually did get to the zoo an hour early before sunset so I could film some of the animals. I was unable to film every single animal when I was there. I mainly just filmed as much as I can until it began to get dark. And as it started to get dark, I did my second walkthrough where I basically filmed all the decorations and all the beautiful lights. My favorite part of the zoo lights at the San Antonio Zoo was probably the Lakeside Light Show that has all the different lights going along and the snowflakes and stuff like that. It was super, super beautiful. The Lakeside Light Show at the San Antonio Zoo lights is definitely my favorite part of the zoo lights at the San Antonio Zoo. It is definitely beautiful, and it is just as beautiful as the zoo lights at the Houston Zoo. So that was all the attractions I've done this year. So this year I got to go to so many different locations this year. I'm hoping to make it to new states in 2025. I hope you all enjoyed all my fresh content I had for you this year. I got to go to so many different locations. I appreciate the support you've shown to my channel, and for everybody that has had the chance to subscribe. On November 9th was the day I gained 700 subscribers, so I'm really hoping to make it to 800 real soon. So I have lots of big plans for 2025. I am planning on returning to the Northeast at the end of summer of 2025, so I'm excited for that, and I'm also excited for whatever plans I have for 2025. I'm hoping to get to new states next year and make it to new zoos and places like that. Perhaps I'm hoping to make it to the southwest part of the U.S. That's a region I don't think I have been to before, like Arizona or Utah. Hopefully I'll be able to make it to those states soon. Hopefully I'll get to them next year, and I'm hoping to make it to as many new states as possible and eventually finish up all the states. And I'm not exactly sure what I'll do when I'm done visiting all the states, so I'm really looking forward to next year. I have lots of big plans and lots of new adventures for next year. So leave some comments down below for what was your favorite location that I went to this year, or if you have any suggestions for any location you'd like to see me go to next year. I will try to fit it into my plans, whether if it's a location I'll be able to make it to or not. If you don't see me go to a place you wanted me to go to, then I'll most likely try and get to it on another road trip in the future. So I appreciate everybody's comments, questions, suggestions, even criticisms, as long as you're not mean about it. So I appreciate everyone who has had the chance to subscribe to my channel. Thank you everybody for watching this video. I wish you all a happy new year, and I will see you again next time. Bye!